Hello and welcome back. Today I'm going to talk about three very basic concepts in JavaScript called variables, constants and literals. The setup you can see right now is what I set up in my last video. So if you're unsure of what that is, go and see the very first video where I set up this environment. So to start off with, what is a variable? Well, a variable is actually anything that can change over time. So it could be the time of day. It could be the number of tweets that Donald Trump has sent out. So we declare them in JavaScript using the let keyword. In the past it was something called var, but ES6 has introduced something a lot more useful called let. So we would say let Trump tweets, or we could say let num coffee beans. I hope I've spelled that right. The important thing to remember here is that neither of them have a value assigned to them, so they are simply placeholders. So it's Trump tweets is unknown and number of coffee beans is unknown as far as the JavaScript is concerned, and we can actually see that by printing it out to the console. If you look at the window terminal at the bottom, if I save this, it says it is undefined. Now we can change that by assigning a value to it, which is done with an equal sign. And similarly, we could say here, and now when we saved that, it reran and we saw it printed that value of 10. So they actually have values now. Now there's also a shortcut or a shorthand way of declaring variables where you don't have to keep using the let keyword for every single declaration, and that is by separating them with a comma. And that's exactly the same thing as what you saw before. Now you can also only declare a variable once. So if we try to do this, for example, Trump tweets again, we would see an error. So once you've declared a variable, given it a name, you can't use that name again. So these variable names are also called identifiers, so that's just another important thing that you need to remember. So there are some conventions when it comes to naming these variables, and one of them is that a variable can only start with a letter, a $sign, or an underscore. So you can have Trump tweets there, which starts with a letter, or you can have $Trump tweets, or you can have underscore Trump tweets. And everything after the first character can only be a number, a letter, a $sign, or an underscore. So you can have a number, a $sign, an underscore, and other letters. So those are the only characters you can use when naming a variable. There are also conventions, and I say they're just conventions, for the structure of the name of the variable. So for example, one of those is something called camel case, which we're actually using here, which is if your variable name is made up of more than one word, the first word would have a lowercase and every other word after that would have an uppercase. And there is something called snake case, which would be essentially separating each word, each lowercase word, with an underscore, and that is called a snake case. And these are just conventions. You're not made to use them by the JavaScript interpreter. It's just that everybody else tends to name their variables that way. So if you don't want to annoy anyone you're working with, you may as well use these. Okay, so I think we're done with that. So the other thing I want to move on to is something called constants. Now, a constant is something that holds a value, but unlike a variable, it can't be changed after initialization. So once you've given a constant a value, you can't change that value afterwards. And the way you would declare a constant is const, and then the identifier. So you would say number of sons that we have equals 1. And let's print that out, save that. We can say here the number of sons is 1. But if we try to now give it another value, number of sons equal 2, bang, we see an error. So don't do that. And finally, we have something called literals. Now, literal is essentially the value that you give to a variable or a constant. So it can be a string literal. So you could say let name equals John. I don't know what happened to the equals there. Or it could be a numeric literal, which is literally a number. Now these aren't the only things that you can set a variable to. There are other things as well, but these are specifically what a string literal and a numeric literal are. And I think that's all for today. Thank you very much.